A rented cottage in rural Georgia, its air still thick with the scent of new paint, held an unexpected final scene. A painter's brush swept across canvas, then abruptly ceased its motion, marking a sudden, irreversible halt in time. A deeply confidential letter, penned on somber, black-bordered stationery, bore a signature and referenced the sitting President of the United States with only the single, enigmatic initial, B. When Franklin Roosevelt's death became imminent, three distinct sources offered their own forecasts regarding the aftermath. The formidable White House communications apparatus confidently assumed their carefully constructed public story would remain unchallenged. The public image portrayed Eleanor, his devoted wife and steadfast wartime partner, faithfully at his side during his final moments. Eleanor, attending a tea gathering in Washington, received the urgent summons that day. As early as 1918, Roosevelt's political strategists had determined that terminating the clandestine relationship would permanently erase any public trace. A solemn vow was extracted, incriminating letters were relinquished, and the woman at the center of the scandal was promptly dismissed from the family residence. Yet the liaison persisted for another 27 years, and when archivists later sorted through FDR's postmortem papers, they confidently believed all private communications had been eradicated. This deliberate silence, they presumed, was a permanent choice and would endure indefinitely. For 21 years, that carefully constructed silence indeed prevailed. However, after 6 decades hidden in private possession, a cache of 5,000 documents almost reached the auction block. Their acquisition by the National Archives necessitated a specific legislative action from Congress. Tucked within those pages lay a letter, again on black-bordered widow stationery, detailing a clandestine rendezvous in Warm Springs, Georgia. The author of this correspondence conspicuously avoided using Roosevelt's actual name. Instead, she referred to him as the subject, and, on one occasion, simply the B, a clear abbreviation for boss. The individual behind these cryptic messages was Lucy Mercer Rutherford. Lucy had already been deceased for 62 years by the time this particular letter finally surfaced in the public record. In 1914, Eleanor Roosevelt engaged her services as a social secretary, a position requiring 3 mornings of work each week. Lucy Page Mercer, then 23, hailed from a prominent Washington family whose wealth had vanished during the devastating panic of 1893. Despite their financial ruin, she retained an innate social grace and possessed a distinct quality that, remarkably, several Roosevelt family members later characterized independently using almost identical language. Her presence had an uncanny ability to put everyone completely at ease. Franklin took notice of her in 1916, specifically during Eleanor's and the children's absence at Campobello. He began organizing exclusive yachting excursions on the Potomac and private dinners, events where Lucy was a guest, but Eleanor was conspicuously absent. By 1917, Lucy had departed from Eleanor's service. Historical accounts ambiguously state she either resigned or was terminated, but definitively confirm her subsequent enlistment in the Navy. At this time, Franklin held the position of Assistant Secretary of the Navy. Coincidentally, Lucy received an assignment directly to his departmental office. September 1918 saw Franklin's return from Europe, gravely ill with pneumonia. He was so weakened that sailors had to physically carry him off the vessel. As Eleanor unpacked his personal effects, she discovered, nestled within, a packet of perfumed letters from Lucy, carefully tied with a velvet ribbon. Eleanor immediately proposed a divorce, while Franklin's formidable mother, Sarah, threatened to disinherit him entirely. Lewis Howe, a shrewd political advisor, warned that a divorce would prematurely terminate his burgeoning career. Furthermore, Lucy's devout Catholic beliefs intrinsically forbade her marriage to any divorced man. Franklin ultimately prioritized his political ambitions, solemnly vowing to Eleanor that he would never again encounter Lucy. Despite his pledge, he extended an invitation to Lucy for his inaugural ceremony in 1933. A car was discreetly arranged via White House logistics, with Eleanor kept entirely unaware of her presence. She would, in fact, attend all 4 of his inaugurations, each time under similarly clandestine arrangements. By 1920, Lucy had wed Winthrop Rutherford, a prosperous New York widower, who was 16 years her senior and already a father of 6. Assuming roles as stepmother and estate manager, she vanished completely from all public scrutiny. Nevertheless, her private correspondence with Franklin persisted, flowing through discreet channels throughout the 1920s and 30s. Winthrop Rutherford passed away during the spring of 1944. Just months later, the clandestine visits recommenced, now orchestrated by Anna Roosevelt, Franklin's eldest daughter, who meticulously managed her father's increasingly fragile personal schedule. Anna would later state that her father, a sick and utterly exhausted man, desperately required companionship, and that Lucy offered a solace Eleanor, by her own acknowledgement, simply could not provide. Eleanor remained completely oblivious to these clandestine arrangements, the discreet White House meetings, the private drives, or the secret trips to Warm Springs. The idea for a formal portrait session originated with Lucy. She personally commissioned Elizabeth Shumatov, a Russian-born artist, to journey to Warm Springs and commence a formal depiction of Franklin, an exclusive, private project for her own collection. The morning of April 12, 1945, found Roosevelt seated in a worn leather armchair within the living room of the Little White House. Shumatov stood poised at her easel, while Lucy sat quietly in close proximity. Franklin's cousin, Laura Delano, completed the small, intimate gathering. Precisely at 12:40 that afternoon, Roosevelt lifted his left hand, pressing it against his temple. "I have a terrific headache," he uttered, before losing consciousness entirely, even as those present rushed to his side. The medical emergency response was instantaneous, as was the swift, calculated political reaction. Within moments, both Secret Service agents and household staff grasped the grim reality. The president was dying. And the woman present was neither his wife nor a relative. Indeed, she was someone who could never be officially acknowledged in the public narrative of this critical event. Lucy Mercer. Rutherford departed Warm Springs hastily, well before Eleanor's aircraft even touched down. The uncomfortable truth would ultimately be revealed by Laura Delano. Her revelation came not to the eager press, but privately to Eleanor, in the somber days succeeding the funeral. Delano informed Eleanor that Lucy had indeed been present at Franklin's deathbed, and, moreover, that Anna had been orchestrating their clandestine meetings for more than a year. The profound rift that formed between Eleanor and her daughter persisted for many years. Lucy retreated south to her expansive estate in Aiken, South Carolina, granting no interviews whatsoever. No public statement was ever issued. In the ensuing weeks, she systematically destroyed all of Franklin's letters addressed to her. 3 decades of intimate correspondence spanning the Great Depression, wartime mobilization, D-Day, and Yalta were irrevocably consigned to flames. The FDR Presidential Library's current holdings comprise merely 4 letters dating from 1926 to 1928, discovered not among Lucy's personal effects, but within donated family documents unearthed decades subsequent to her death. Following the funeral, Eleanor dispatched a small painting of Franklin to Lucy, who, in turn, replied with a written letter. Lucy's letter conveyed that Franklin, in his final moments, had frequently spoken of Eleanor, her unwavering courage, her tireless work, and the enduring legacy she had forged. She confessed her deep affection for him and expressed a hope that Eleanor might comprehend the unique character of their bond. Eleanor received the correspondence. She absorbed its contents. A response from her never materialized. For the subsequent 17 years, she dedicated herself to monumental work that eventually led Harry Truman to famously declare her the First Lady of the world. Lucy Mercer. Rutherford's name never again crossed her lips in any public forum. Lucy's life concluded on July 31, 1948. Leukemia claimed her at 57 years of age. She was interred at Tranquility Cemetery in Tranquility, New Jersey. Her obituary in the New York Times spanned a mere 62 words. Conspicuously, it made no reference to Franklin Roosevelt. That carefully guarded silence persisted throughout the 1940s and well into the 1950s. The veil of secrecy finally broke in 1966 when Jonathan Daniels, a former aide to Roosevelt, released a book explicitly identifying Lucy and detailing the affair's 3-decade duration. The Roosevelt family, predictably, contested certain specific details. However, Elliott Roosevelt subsequently corroborated the central narrative. Still, the more extensive archive remained inaccessible for an additional 44 years. Grace Tully, FDR's devoted personal secretary, had removed 5,000 pages of critical documents upon her departure from the White House on April 12th. This significant collection remained in private custody for 6.5 decades. Then, in 2010, it almost reached a public auction. Its eventual transfer to the National Archives necessitated federal legislation, notably co-sponsored by Senators Schumer and Slaughter. Among those 5,000 pages was the very letter, on black-bordered widow's stationery, explicitly marked personal and private, detailing the arrangements for that fateful final visit to Warm Springs. Lucy, with careful discretion, never inscribed Roosevelt's name within its contents. Her intimate correspondence had already proven costly to her once before. Back in 1918, she was determined not to repeat that particular error. The incomplete portrait, remarkably, endures to this day. Shumatov ceased her brushwork precisely at the instant Roosevelt suffered his collapse. This canvas, personally commissioned by Lucy, and capturing Franklin in the ultimate hour of his existence, now hangs prominently at the Little White House Museum in Warm Springs. The artist's brushwork abruptly halts mid-composition. Consequently, the entire left portion of the background remained perpetually unfinished. Lucy Mercer. Rutherford served as Roosevelt's unwavering private confidant throughout 3 tumultuous decades of American crisis. She possessed no official titles, nor did her image ever grace any public photographs. She was present in the room during his passing, yet was swiftly removed before his wife's arrival. She meticulously destroyed all incriminating evidence, passed away 3 years subsequent to his death, and was granted a mere 62-word obituary that pointedly excluded his name. The carefully curated official record consistently depicted Eleanor as his sole companion in his final moments. Yet, the true historical account, painstakingly pieced together from a secretary's hidden files, a near-miss auction, and a pivotal act of Congress, ultimately confirmed the presence of a different woman in that very room. This woman quietly drove south through Georgia, maintaining an absolute public silence regarding the events. She deliberately incinerated documents that could have guaranteed her lasting fame, choosing instead to die in a town aptly named Tranquility. To this day, historians continue to debate the precise nature of their relationship subsequent to 1918. The deliberate destruction of their correspondence ensures that this historical debate will forever remain unresolved. Such an enduring ambiguity was, in all probability, precisely Lucy's ultimate intention. The immense force of political power forcibly ejected her from that room, moments before Eleanor's plane touched down. Yet, the relentless pursuit of historical truth preserved within the archives ultimately reinstated her presence.